Midaq Alley is a novel by the Egyptian writer Naguib Mahfouz, published in 1947. Naguib Mahfouz is the 1988 Nobel Prize laureate in literature. This historical realist novel is from the third-person omniscient narrator. This modernist social novel is set in the 1940s World War II era of Cairo, Egypt. The titular Midaq Alley is a dead-end stone-paved street located in Cairo's ancient Gamaliya district that leads to the Sanadikia Street, surrounded by the Gharia and Saga quarters. The alley is a miniature version of Egypt during a time of World War II changes. Mahfouz introduces the residents through the alley's worn and weary appearance. Midaq Alley lives in almost complete isolation from all surrounding activity, holding on to scraps of tradition that have disappeared elsewhere. From 1882 to 1922, Egypt lived under British rule. The 1919 revolution brought together several political groups, including the Wafd Party, demanding self-governance. Britain recognized the Kingdom of Egypt in 1922. The Anglo-Egyptian Treaty of 1936 allowed British troops to remain, keeping control of the Suez Canal and much of Egyptian politics. When the Second World War began in 1939, Egypt's strategic position, like the Suez Canal, turned the country into a key military base for British operations in the Mediterranean and the Middle East. Battles were fought on Egyptian soil, cities were bombed by Axis planes, and the massive buildup for the war damaged the economy. The large presence of British soldiers intensified nationalist anger that sparked the 1952 revolution that followed soon after the war's end. In Midaq Alley, the shops open with the sunrise and shut as the sun goes down. After dark, the men drift into Kirsha's cafe that suggest a past glory. Kirsha replaces the old custom of poets reciting their verses with the crackling voice of a radio. Meanwhile, Mrs. Sonia Afifi owns one of the alley's houses and longs to remarry. She asks her tenant, the matchmaker Hamida, for help. Hamida agrees, on the condition that the stingy Mrs. Afifi gives her free rent for life. Hamida's adopted daughter, Hamida, is beautiful and sees no worth considering or suitable husband in the alley. She wants a livelier life, one like the Jewish factory girls who stroll the streets in stylish clothes and earn their own money. In the middle of this, the barber Abbas dreams of marrying Hamida, who is indifferent towards him. He lives with his friend Uncle Kamil. Abbas's childhood friend, Hussein Kirsha, now earns well working for the British Army and urges Abbas to join the army too. Hussein Kirsha tells Abbas to seize the wartime chance to make money. Meanwhile, Mr. Kirsha's appetite for hashish and young boys is an open secret. Recently, he has taken a liking to a young salesman and invites him to the cafe. His wife knows all about these affairs but is powerless to stop him. The alley's bakery is run by the fierce Husniya and her timid husband, Jada. They rent a small outbuilding to Zaida, a man who makes a living by crippling beggars so they can earn more on the streets. Dr. Bushi, the alley's untrained but cheap dentist, often brings Zaida new recruits. Salim Alwan is a wealthy businessman whose company thrives in wartime because of his black market dealings. His daily lunch of husked wheat fuels a powerful sexual appetite. As his wife ages, he begins to desire young Hamida. Mrs. Kirsha confronts her husband about the young salesman. Around the same time, Abbas confesses his love to Hamida. She brushes him off at first, but when he declares he will join the British Army to earn money for their future, she agrees to an engagement. Desperate for help, Mrs. Kirsha turns to the pious Radwan Husseini. He advises Kirsha to abstain from sin. Kirsha pays no heed and Mrs. Kirsha eventually storms into the cafe and attacks the young salesman. With his engagement declared, Abbas prepares for a year or two of army service. On the night before he leaves, Hamida lets him kiss her goodbye. Jealous of Abbas's departure and ashamed of his father's latest scandal, Hussein Kirsha quarrels with his parents and abandons the alley. Meanwhile, Hamida finds a husband for Mrs. Sonia Afifi, Ahmad Effendi Talbat, a civil servant 10 years younger than his bride. He refuses to pay a dowry and demands a photo, but Mrs. Afifi is thrilled. Not long afterward, Salim Alwan decides to ask Hamida to be his second wife, but gets upset when he learns that Hamida is already engaged to a poor Abbas. Hamida is astonished that such a wealthy man would want a girl from their lower social-economic class. Hamida seeks counsels from Husseini, who advises against accepting Alwan's proposal. Hamida and her mother mourn that the girl's engagement to Abbas forces them to decline. They decide to accept Alwan's offer, only to learn that he has suffered a massive heart attack the previous night and has limited life left, so their dream of a wealthy suitor ends. Hamida recognizes that she can't marry a poor man like Abbas. When the merchant and politician Ibrahim Farhat holds a rally in the alley, Hamida notices a middle-class man watching her. He continues to appear at Kirsha's cafe beneath her window. They eventually meet on one of her walks. He claims to love her. She rejects him at first but begins to rethink her answer. Around this time, Mrs. Afifi visits Dr. Bushi to buy a set of gold teeth at his bargain prices. Salim Alwan recovers from his heart attack but returns as a changed man, fearful, morbid, and no longer interested in Hamida. Hamida's attention is now entirely on her mysterious admirer, who introduces himself as Ibrahim Faraj. He takes her to the wealthier quarters of the city, where he lives in an elegant home. She imagines a new life with him until she discovers he has no intention of marrying her but wants to recruit her as a high-end prostitute. After resisting at first, she eventually moves in with him. He teaches her English, trains her to dance, and renames her as Titi. She is convinced that he loves her. Hussein Kirsha returns to his parents' home with a wife and brother-in-law. He has lost his job as the war winds down. Kirsha is angry until he sees the handsome brother-in-law and allows them to stay. One night, Dr. Bushi brings Zaida news of a corpse with gold teeth. Dr. Bushi and Zaida sneak out to rob the grave but are caught. When the story spreads, Mrs. Afifi panics and tears her new teeth from her mouth before fainting. Fortunately, her young husband revived her. Abbas returns to the alley on leave. Uncle Kamil breaks the news of Hamida's disappearance. Heartbroken, Abbas learns from the factory girls that she may have run away with a man, and he becomes revengeful. Hussein encourages him to drink, and in their drunken wandering they glimpse a beautifully dressed woman in a carriage who turns out to be Hamida, so Abbas chases her. Hamida had stormed out on Faraj after realizing his deceptions. When Abbas reaches her, Hamida first lashes out, then realizes she can use his anger to strike back at Faraj. She claims she was forced into prostitution and tells Abbas where Faraj will be on Sunday. She expected a dramatic quarrel only because Abbas was known for his gentleness. Back in the alley, Radwan Husseini prepares for a holy pilgrimage and offers a final piece of spiritual guidance, particularly aimed at Abbas. Abbas rejects it and tells Hussein Kirsha his plan. Though doubtful, Hussein goes with him to observe the bar where Faraj will be. There, Abbas sees Hamida flirting with British soldiers. Enraged, he throws a beer glass at her, slicing her face. The soldiers beat him to death on the spot. In time, the alley settles back into its old rhythm. Hamida heals and returns to her foster mother. A new family takes over Dr. Bushi's old rooms. As Radwan Husseini's return date approaches, Midaq Alley resumes its ordinary flow of life. Let's thematically analyze Midaq Alley. Kirsha sets up a radio in his cafe, and this radio is a physical symbol of progress and modernity. Radwan Husseini and Abbas represent the comfort and steadiness offered by tradition. Husseini, a devout man, often guides the alley's residents. Husseini is out of tune with the modern world. His advice is sincere but difficult to apply because few people can imitate his self-denial and religious discipline. This devotion inevitably clashes with the hopes of the younger generation. Hussein Kirsha and Hamida crave modernity, freedom, and upward mobility. Hamida dreams of a wealthy husband who could lavishly provide for her, and this desire for wealth leads her to be ensnared by Faraj. Hussein Kirsha abandons his parents for a modern life, insisting he wants to be a gentleman with electricity in his home, like his friends. In the alley, electricity is viewed with suspicion as it marks the erosion of the world they know. Mr. Kirsha's retort sums up the alley's fear of modernization. Thanks be to God that your mother, for all her scandals, has at least kept our house safe from electricity. Hussein Kirsha soon returns in defeat, laid off from the British Army and stripped of his income. His dream of becoming modern topples because he is far more shaped by the alley's values than he realizes. For him, modernity is the opposite of Midaq Alley, and that makes his attempt to escape his roots inevitably tragic. The wartime pushed many women into the workforce, like Hamida's factory girl friends. Inside Midaq Alley, several women hold power over the men around them. Husniya dominates her timid husband, turning the usual pattern of domestic authority on its head. The beautiful Hamida keeps every suitor at arm's length. She refuses to settle into the narrow life of obedience and believes motherhood is beneath her. The financially secure and independent Mrs. Sania Afifi wants a husband for companionship. Beauty remains a woman's most reliable currency, and Hamida's story makes that clear. The socially respected and seemingly religious Radwan Husseini treats his wife as a place to release the disappointments life deals him. Marriage is largely a transaction. For women, it is often the only path to safety or a future. This is why Hamida restlessly considers between Abbas and then Salim Alwan. She searches for security as much as affection. Her outrage at Ibrahim Faraj stems from his betrayal and refusal to marry her, despite offering her the lavish life she once thought she wanted. Many of the Alley's married couples are unhappy but committed, like Kirsha and Mrs. Kirsha or Rawin Husseini and his wife. Mrs. Afifi hesitates to marry again because it means putting her hard-earned fortune at risk, but she knows that companionship outside marriage would leave her open to judgment, so she chooses to get married. Kirsha's homosexuality is a direct challenge to what society expects. His friends largely ignore it, respecting his privacy. Mrs. Kirsha finds her husband's affairs intolerable. Her public attack on the young man he pursues becomes one of the few moments she can assert her own authority. Kirsha's behavior is shrugged off, while Hamida's sexual choices mark her for condemnation. Hussein Kirsha declares Hamida deserves death, and Abbas eventually physically assaults her. Their reactions expose a world where men's transgressions are forgiven, but women's attempts at self-assertion are punished. The clearest sign of colonial power in the novel is the British Army, whose presence dominates Cairo during the war. Ironically, it is also a source of prosperity during wartime. Hussein Kirsha and Abbas earn wages through British military work, with their wages 10 times higher than anything they could make at home. Hussein enjoys this new income so much that he secretly hopes the war will never end. But the steady stream of British money can't erase the resentment Egyptians feel at being exploited. The bitterness erupts violently in Abbas's final confrontation with the British soldiers. To see foreign soldiers exploiting Hamida is more than he or Hussein can bear. In this moment, Hamida becomes a symbol of Egypt, a nation straining against its limits, breaking free, only to fall into another kind of captivity. Most of the Alley's choices are driven by economics more than ideology. Salim Alwan's wealth grows through black market trade. Hussein and Abbas accept military jobs under the British. Hamida's earning power depends on British soldiers who can pay for her. Kirsha traded whatever youthful political passion he once had for the practical gains of corruption. The Midaq Alley's residents didn't care of Hitler's cruelty but only what economic opportunities wartime could afford them. Ibrahim Farhat, the merchant and politician, claims to represent the ideals of the old Wafd party, but his actions of bribery, hollow promises, and a complete misunderstanding of the people he addresses reduce politics to performance. Kirsha's cynicism toward politics comes from long disappointment. After watching leaders act in their own interest, he sees no reason why a poor voter should not use the system to profit as well. Do like and share.